Subscribe to LearnCap and hit the bell icon to get notified.
Hello guys, this is Professor Harsh Kachalia. As you know, and now we are going to start with this very amazing, fantastic, mind-blowing chapter. Distribution of profits, as you can see on your screen. Distribution of profits means what? Okay, first of all, this chapter is coming towards the far end of the corporate law syllabus. It comes from section 123 onwards till 127, right? 123 onwards till 127. Remembering section numbers in this chapter, not required, not very important. But if you still want to remember, you can follow the notes. Yes, it's given in the notes, of course, and you can follow them. But yes, it's not very important. Chapters like prospectus, you have to remember section numbers. Charges, you should remember. Deposits, you should remember. Accounts of the companies, fewer sections, you should remember. General meetings chapter, of course, at least 20 sections from that chapter you should remember. So all in all, if you see, out of the 148 sections applicable, most of them, near about 100 or so, you are supposed to remember. So when I say that in this chapter you don't have to remember sections, wear a smile and be like, oh, thank God. All right. But yes, of course, if you remember, it's always good. There is no harm. There is no harm in that. Before I start with the chapter, let me just talk about some basic stuff, some basic concepts with you. Okay. Distribution of profits. What does it mean? Have you ever invested in any company? Have you been on the other side of the company, on the shareholder side, where you are receiving dividends? Do you know the importance of receiving dividends? Do you know the value of receiving dividends? Let's understand all of that. First of all, as we are starting on with this chapter today, as we are starting on with this chapter right now, let me tell you, we have already done with the introduction video earlier before this itself, right? Okay. So now this particular chapter falls under the distribution of profits name under the Companies Act, starting from 123 to 127, as I told you. Hey, do you know what is an act, first of all? Do you know what is a company law? Do you know what is a law? What is an act? What is a bill? What is a draft? Any idea? Have you ever known that? Have you ever studied about it or read about it or heard about it? If yes, then check whether I am correct or not. And if no, then it's time you have a look over here. Look here. So as you are aware, we have authorities like Lok Sabha, yes, Rajya Sabha, and then we have our great president. Am I right? So whenever any particular law is presented in the parliament, when any particular law is presented in the parliament, it is first required to be approved by the Lok Sabha. Is that clear? First, it is required to be approved by the Lok Sabha. Thereafter, when it is already approved by the Lok Sabha, it is presented in the Rajya Sabha. So it is presented in the Rajya Sabha here. If it is approved from Rajya Sabha also, then it is sent forward to the president for his consent. When it receives the president's consent, then it becomes, so this plus this becomes your act. So sir, when it is presented at the first stage over here, at that point, what should we call it? So when it is presented in the first house, we call it a bill. What do we call it? A bill. Bill. A bill means what? A bill means a draft of an act which is not yet approved by both the houses of the parliament and the president of. Similarly, when this bill is supposed to be presented at the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha and for the president's approval, for some reasons it is not approved. It is not approved at either or both the houses of the parliament, but has received approval of the president because the parliament was not in session at that moment. This type of bill, which receives the consent of the president first and later on we go on for the approval of both the houses of the parliament, We call it an ordinance. What do we call it? Ordinance. An ordinance is then again laid in front of both the houses of parliament, and then it becomes an act. Understood? All right. So this is some very basic concept, basic stuff that because you are studying law, you should be aware of. If this is understood, let's come to our Companies Act. Okay. Distribution of profits, the chapter that we are doing. What does it mean? Let me tell you. A company in the total financial year has made an income of 100 rupees. While making this total income of 100 rupees, it has also made an expense of 70 rupees. So the balance which is left is, of course, 30 rupees. You don't need calculator for this. This 30 rupees which is left as a balance, this is called as a profit. Am I right? Income minus expense. The question is, can you make the distribution of dividend out of this 30 rupees now? First of all, what is dividend then, sir? Then I should tell you that also. Let me tell you that. Dividend is nothing but certain percentage of the profits which is determined by the company, approved by the shareholders, for distribution among all the shareholders. It is like, if I am giving you something, you should give something to me in return, right? So if I am giving you something, let us say I am giving you money, I am buying the shares of your company. If I am giving you money and I am buying the shares of the company, it means the money which I have given to you, I should get something in return for that money, yes or no? So this something which I should receive in return for the money is known as dividend. Getting the point? Now I tell you the importance of dividend. You might have heard about Warren Buffett. Yes, Warren Buffett, one of the biggest investors in the United States, right? I'll tell you something. That person has invested in a company like Coca-Cola for a very, very, really, really long time. And if you might Google or maybe Wikipedia, or if you read it somewhere, you might come to know that his amount of investment in Coca-Cola is as much that whatever remuneration is earned by the CEO of Coca-Cola, more than that is the amount of dividend received by Warren Buffett sitting at home. Simply sitting at home. Investments are, of course, subject to market risks. You must read the scheme related documents carefully before investing. That is the disclaimer we find every time on the television also, or on any application of investments also. We do. Do we? Investments, I am not saying do it blindly, but I am saying you must make investments. Understood? Let me give you an example over here. Can you make distribution of profits out of this? Answer is no, sir. Because this profit is not your actual profit. No. I'll tell you what is actual profit. When you got an income of 100 rupees and then you spent 70 rupees from your pocket, you got 30 rupees in your hand, right? For example, I am a banana seller. Okay, so I have my whole cart full of bananas where I take the cart, and bananas costing 70 rupees I have placed on the cart. Entire day, throughout the day, I am walking, pulling the cart from one end to another of the city, and I am selling bananas. At the end of the day, when I came back home, I found 100 rupees in my pocket and no banana left. So 70 rupees was the cost and 100 rupees are in my pocket. So total profit that I made is 100 rupees, 30 rupees, right? Our question is this 30 rupees an appropriate figure of profit or no? And I told you, no, sir. This 30 rupees is not an appropriate figure of profit. Now the question is why, sir? Because the cart on which you were pulling the bananas throughout the day, it is a materialistic thing, right? What do you think will be the life of the card? Is it going to be the same throughout your lifetime, throughout 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line? No. Meaning the value of the card is going to depreciate eventually. Am I right? And if you say that the value of the card is going to depreciate eventually, you also need to understand what? You need to understand that in this profit of 30 rupees, you have not considered your non-cash expenditures like depreciation. So now if I say 10 rupees is the depreciation over here, so 20 rupees is what I have actually supposed to recognize as my profit. This 20 rupees which I am having, this is my actual profit. What the company says, because you investors gave us the money, we could buy bananas of 70 rupees. And then we made a point to sell it at 100 rupees and made a profit of 30, which after appropriation and depreciation and everything comes out to 20 rupees net. So out of this 20 rupees, we are deciding that we want to distribute dividends. And that is why, let us say we are deciding we want to give 25% dividend. Very high rate, I'm saying. We want to give 25% dividend, which comes to rupees 5. Do you understand? So they have decided to give rupees 5 as dividends. Total. Okay, not per shareholder, 25%. Okay. So this is what they have planned and this is what they are doing. So is it correct? Of course it is correct. Understood? What is this 5 rupees? This 5 rupees is the total amount of dividend that the company is going to distribute to the shareholders. Which shareholders? Those shareholders who had invested in the company, those shareholders who had purchased the shares of the company, those shareholders who had given something to the company with the expectation that company will give them something in return. In this chapter of distribution of profits, what we are supposed to do is we are going to learn the concepts of dividend, like how much dividend a company can give. When I talk about dividend, always remember, guys, when I'm talking about dividend, or you call it distribution of profits, whatever you want to call it. Remember, dividend is not something that a company, you think that, okay, if I've invested, I will get dividend and company should give me 500 rupees dividend or 1000 rupees dividend. No. There are rules given for dividend. Rules with respect to what? I will write it like this. With respect to dividend, there are provisions in the Act. Plus, there are rules for distribution of dividend. What will be given over here when you read this provisions of the Act or rules? How much dividend company can give? When can the company give dividend? From where should the company give dividend? Then, are there any restrictions on making the payment of dividend? What are the different types of dividend? What will be the penalties if you do not make the payment of dividend as required by the law? Understood? And many more things are there. Many more things. I'll tell you one more. Conditions, most importantly. Conditions that you must satisfy if you want to make the payment of dividend. So technically, if I have to tell you, once you find out answers to all of these questions, your chapter is over. Honestly, once you find out the answers to all these questions, your chapter is over. Nothing left. And that is what we have to understand in this chapter of dividends. Okay. So before I proceed, if you are having a rough notes or something, just copy these things somewhere. Yes. Okay. Just make a note of these things somewhere in your notes, and then we will proceed with the next part. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, talking about distribution of profits. Color, which color do I want? I want distribution of profits. Meaning, another name for distribution of profits means distribution of dividend. Understood? Let's go one by one, provision by provision. Dividend can be paid out of what? That is the first question. So dividend can be paid out of what? Do you have past profits in your company? Yes. Dividend is distribution of profits. So if you have profits of some previous earlier years, you can use that also. If you have profits in the current year, you can use that also. You can use both also, but after providing for depreciation. Am I right? After providing for depreciation. Or instead of writing something like this, I should do something. I will make a star over here, which means conditions apply. Conditions apply, sir, but conditions apply, we'll have to write the condition. Yes, I have already written the condition for you. If you can see over here, this is the condition. I brought the star down. Then they are saying you can also distribute dividend out of, I said you can distribute out of your free reserves also. A company has profits, right? Profits are of two types, divisible and non-divisible. So there are reserves like general reserves, which are free reserves, which you can utilize for any purpose, any purpose. So that any purpose can be dividend also. So you can utilize the free reserves also. But what they are saying is if you are using your free reserves for the payment of dividend, then you have to satisfy certain conditions. All right. Let me highlight the conditions for you over here. You have to satisfy certain conditions. Now the question will be, sir, what conditions are we required to satisfy? That I will tell you in the next slide. All right, next slide I will tell you. Then they are saying you can also make the payment of dividend out of the funds given. Okay, write it up. Funds given by the central government or the state government. Many times what happens now, the project that the company is working on may be a long-term project. Because that project on which the company is working on is a long-term project, because of that, what happens is it is not every time possible that the company will make the payment of dividend every year. Now, supposedly, if I say the project is like construction of a road or construction of a dam or something, then this project might go on for maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. So 2 or 3 years, company is only incurring costs. Revenue has not started over here. Making of profits has not started over here, right? So investors will also feel, why should we invest in the such infrastructure companies where the projects are always going to be long, and that is why we are not going to get returns in the short term. So to make sure that the investors keep on investing their money also, the central or state governments many a times happen to give grants. You might have heard about government grants. The governments give grant to such kind of companies where they say, take this money and utilize it for the purpose of distribution of dividend to your shareholders, so that they feel we are also getting something in return, and they will keep on investing in such companies. And then you have your option of capital, the share capital of the company. Can you make the distribution of dividend out of the share capital of the company? Logically think, it is absolutely not allowed. Now, logically again analyze why it is not allowed, sir. What is dividend? Dividend is the return on investment for the shareholders. What is the investment of the shareholders? The shares which they have purchased, that is their investment. Okay. So investors have purchased the shares and given you the money for such shares. Am I right? Investors have purchased the shares and given you the money for such shares. That is your share capital. And now what you are doing? You are reducing the share capital and distributing the money from the share capital to the investors. Is that return on investments? No, that is return of the investment only. Understood? So that is not considered as dividends over here. Is that clear? Important points are there which I have given in the form of this large arrow, where first point we already saw. If you are making the payment of dividend out of past profits or current year profits, it always has to be after making provisions for depreciation. If you are making the payment of dividend as per the requirements of the central or state government, then it has to be as per the terms and conditions which are given, as per the terms and conditions which are given by the central or state government. In case you are saying that I have got X amount of profit this year, let us take an example. You are saying that, sir, I have got 100 rupees of profit this year. And from this 100 rupees of profit, I want to transfer 25%, that is rupees 25, to the reserves account. Reserves account. Understood? This is what? This is X limited. And then there is this Y limited who is saying that out of the 100 rupees profit, I want to transfer to reserves 0%. 25% transfer to reserves. 0% transfer to reserves. Therefore, reserves will be 0. Understood? Now the question is X limited right or is Y limited right? The lawmaker says X limited is right and Y limited also is right. Why? Because as per the provisions of Companies Act 1956, the old one, it was compulsory to transfer a certain amount of profits to reserves, no doubt about that. But as per the new provisions of the Companies Act 2013, they have specified that a company has earned its profits, so whether it wants to transfer the profits to a reserves account or not should be the decision of the company itself. And that is why I am bringing you back to this point over here, third point, which says transfer to reserves. It is purely as per the will of the company. It is not compulsory as per the new. If you are a 100% government company, now pay attention, what is this? There are different type of companies, as you already know, correct? So let me tell you, a company shareholding can be held by public, can be held by promoters, can be held by government. Correct? If promoters are holding 100% stake, then it is known as a private limited company. If public is holding any stake, if public is holding any stake, then I'll tell you how much. It's minimum 25% if you are listed. But I'm not writing minimum 25% over here because public companies are unlisted also. Understood? But if public is holding any stake, in that case, you will be known as a public company. Right? And if government is holding not less than 51% stake. Now, when I'm using the word government, it can be CG or SG or both. Meaning the central government or the state government or both. Understood? If they are holding majority stake in your company, then it will be known as a government company. Simple, understood, clear? Okay. What we need to understand over here is, if at all there is a company in which government is holding 100% stake, full 100% shares of such company are held by a government only, maybe central government, maybe state government, maybe combination of both. If this is the case, in that case, they are saying, if you are a 100% government company, then you cannot make the payment of dividend out of your reserves account. Okay. There are special utilization requirements given for the government companies for the utilization of the reserves. Hence, because here when we say that any other company can make the payment of dividend out of its reserves, over there we have got conditions. As you can see, I've already highlighted this point. I will highlight it once more for you. If you are making a payment of dividend out of reserves, you have to satisfy these conditions. These conditions do not apply to government, 100% government companies. For them, separate set of conditions will be there. Understood? Because these conditions won't be applicable to them, so they will not be allowed to make the payment of dividend out of the reserves as well. Is that clear? Correct? This is your basic of the dividend chapter. Very, very basic portion I have explained. I have not even started with the conditions. Now, next that we are going to do is, what are the conditions required to be fulfilled if you want to make the payment of dividend out of your free reserves. There will be 4 conditions. All the 4 conditions must be satisfied. They are cumulative conditions, meaning you cannot have an optional satisfaction of either 1 or 2 conditions. No, all 4 should be satisfied if applicable. Right? So I'll tell you the 4 conditions. Before that, make a note of this entire diagram in your notes, please. Yes. Make a note of this entire diagram in your notes, and then we shall proceed. I'll give you 2 minutes. Done? Clear? All right. Next step, let's go to the conditions for making the payment of dividend out of free reserves in the next video.
Subscribe to LearnCap and hit the bell icon to get notified.